I came home earlier than usual and found my wife in the kitchen with another man. The DNA test I took that same week destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. I left the results on the table and vanished for 10 years. They used my name to build their lives. Now I'm back to take it all apart. My name is Francis Morgan. I'm 43 years old, a financial auditor for pharmaceutical firms. I've spent 2 decades earning a reputation for precision, for spotting the details everyone else missed. Strange how I failed to notice the biggest lie of all right in my own home. It was a Tuesday morning in October when everything fell apart. I was meant to be in Atlanta for a 3-day compliance inspection. My bags were packed. I kissed Amber goodbye at 5:30 while she was still wrapped in her robe, her hair tied up in that same purple towel she always used. I kissed each of the kids before leaving. Benjamin only grunted, Paige was glued to her phone, and Liam pulled away like I'd burned him. I'd been driving down I-75 for 2 hours when my phone rang. The VP's assistant, flustered and apologetic, told me the review was delayed, some issue with regulators. Pushed to next month. I exited at the next ramp, bought a coffee, and headed back. I didn't call ahead. Why would I? It was my house. I entered through the garage as usual, took my shoes off by the laundry room door. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the air, Amber's typical Tuesday routine. Music drifted from upstairs, one of those pop stations Paige liked. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Then I walked into the kitchen. 2 coffee mugs, 2 plates still slick with bacon grease, and a man standing at the sink, back turned to me, washing dishes. I knew him instantly. Dylan Hayes. My old college friend. My best man. The guy who'd stayed on our couch for 3 months after his divorce 5 years ago. He was wearing my gray University of Michigan t-shirt. Before I could even make sense of that, Amber appeared from the hallway. Her hair hung loose, still damp, and she was wearing Dylan's flannel shirt, the same one from our camping trip last summer, the one he said he brought for guy time. She froze when she saw me. Her face drained of color, flushed, then went pale again. Dylan turned, soap dripping from his hands. He didn't look shocked, just irritated, like I'd shown up at the wrong moment. Francis, Amber said flatly. Just my name. I stood there maybe 5 seconds, but it felt endless. I counted the tiles on the backsplash behind Dylan's head, 12 across. Noticed the coffee maker's light still on. Felt my wedding ring suddenly tighten. Conference got canceled, I heard myself say, though the voice didn't sound like mine. Dylan set down the dish he was holding. Listen, man, he started, but I was already turning away. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything. I just walked through the laundry room, slipped my shoes back on, and left. I drove until I reached a rest stop 40 miles north, sitting in my car as trucks thundered past. That's when I remembered something Amber once said years ago, when Benjamin was still a baby. We were looking at photos, comparing features, and she laughed. Good thing they all look like you, Francis, or people might get suspicious. I'd laughed too, thinking she was joking. But sitting in that parking lot, hands trembling on the wheel, I searched my phone for private DNA labs. Found one that handled paternity cases, cash only, no questions asked. I drove straight there. The technician didn't ask anything. That's what you pay for. Professional silence wrapped in clinical precision. I handed over 3 toothbrushes I'd collected from the upstairs bathroom earlier that day while Amber was volunteering and the kids were at school. Blue for Benjamin, pink for Paige, green for Liam. Added hair from Liam's brush and nail clippings from Paige's trash. The technician, a middle-aged woman with glasses on a chain, labeled everything with numbers instead of names. Results in 2 weeks, she said. We'll call the number you listed. I paid in cash, left, and checked into a motel off Route 23 under a fake name. I spent 2 weeks there, telling Amber I'd been reassigned to an extended audit in Michigan. She didn't question it. Why would she? I'd always been reliable. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday, plain, white, no return address, just a barcode in the corner. I sat in my truck for an hour before opening it, watching strangers come and go, business travelers with luggage, a family with kids, an elderly couple holding hands. Then I tore it open. 3 tests, 3 results. No biological match. Benjamin, none. Paige, none. Liam, none. I read each page again and again. The words didn't change. The numbers didn't move. Cold. Clinical. Absolute. I folded the documents, slid them back into the envelope, and sealed it with tape so nothing could touch them. Then I drove home. It was early morning when I pulled into the driveway. The house was dark except for the porch light Amber always left on for me. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and took off my shoes like always. Everything looked familiar. Family photos on the walls, the kids' schedules pinned to the fridge, the same old couch where we used to watch movies together. Every piece of it was a lie. I walked to the kitchen table and placed the envelope dead center. No note, no message, just the truth, sealed and silent. I looked around one last time. The coffee maker I'd given Amber for her birthday, the second-grade drawing Liam had made still clinging to the fridge magnet, the key holder by the door with all our names carved into it. Then I opened the front door and stepped out into the cold November fog. I left the DNA results on that table and disappeared. I didn't take the car, left it in the driveway with the keys still inside. Didn't take my phone, wallet, or clothes. Just walked to the highway and boarded a Greyhound heading west, using the cash I'd withdrawn over the past 2 weeks. 10 years later, I would come back, but not as the same man. The cabin I found was 40 miles from the nearest town, buried deep in the woods off a forgotten logging road that wasn't on any map. The owner, an old man named Harold, didn't care about names or histories. He had 3 rules. Pay in cash, keep quiet, cause no trouble. I met all 3. The place was crude. 1 room, a wood stove, a sink that ran brown for 5 minutes, windows that rattled in the wind. But it was mine. No memories. No photos. No lies. The first month, all I did was chop wood. I woke with the sunrise, split logs until my hands bled, and stacked them by the cabin wall. The work was brutal, but it kept my mind from unraveling. Every swing of the axe silenced another thought. By winter, I had a rhythm. Up before dawn, coffee from a dented percolator, check the rabbit traps, chop more wood, read old westerns I'd bought from a thrift shop in town. Stories about men who vanished into the frontier and never came back. I took odd jobs for cash, roofing in summer, snow shoveling in winter, fixing barns for ranchers who didn't ask questions. One man 20 miles east paid me $200 and never even asked my name. That's how I liked it. Out here, no one cared who you were, only whether you showed up and worked hard. I did both and kept my mouth shut. At night, I'd sit by the wood stove and think about Benjamin, Paige, and Liam. I wondered if they'd opened the envelope, if Amber had told them the truth or spun another lie. Wondered if they missed me, or if my disappearance only confirmed what they already suspected, that I didn't belong. Sometimes I pulled out a shoebox from beneath the floorboards. Inside were printed pages, public records, screenshots, clippings. Every few months I'd hike into town, use the library computer for an hour, and look them up. Benjamin made honor roll. Paige got into 3 colleges. Liam won a soccer championship. And Amber, she played the part perfectly. Posted photos with captions about strength and single motherhood. The comments were all hearts and prayers. No one asked about me. No one cared. That was fine. Let her have her version. I was building mine. By the 3rd year, I wasn't the same man who'd walked away. I dropped 30 pounds, built muscle from the labor. My hair had turned gray at the temples, and I wore a beard. If someone showed me a photo from my old life, I wouldn't recognize that man. That was the point. It was late spring, the 4th year, when I met Lucy. I'd gone into town for supplies, flour, coffee, batteries, and was loading bags into my truck when I heard yelling from across the street. A man's voice, harsh and drunk. Then a smaller voice, scared, a child. I looked through a front window and saw him. Heavy-set, red-faced, gripping a young girl by the wrist. She couldn't have been older than 8. He yanked her toward the hallway, and she stumbled. I should have stayed out of it. Should have minded my own business. But something inside me snapped. I crossed the street, climbed the porch steps, and knocked hard. The door swung open. The man stood there, breathing heavily, stinking of whiskey, at 2 in the afternoon. "What?" he barked. Heard shouting. I said evenly. "Everything all right?" His eyes narrowed. "None of your business." Behind him, I caught a glimpse of the girl, peeking from the corner. A fading bruise marked her cheek. "I'm making it my business," I said. He stepped forward, trying to intimidate me, but after 4 years of cutting wood and hauling lumber, I didn't flinch. "You need to leave," he growled. I looked past him to the girl. "You okay, sweetheart?" She nodded, but her eyes said otherwise. Then I looked back at him. "If I see another bruise on her, we're going to have a problem." He slammed the door right in my face. I walked back to my truck, sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes, then drove straight to the sheriff's office and filed a report. They said they'd look into it. I didn't believe them, but it was something. 2 weeks later, I saw the girl again. She was sitting alone on the curb outside the general store, clutching a torn backpack. I walked over and crouched beside her. "You remember me?" I asked. She nodded. "What's your name?" "Lucy." "Where's your dad, Lucy?" She shrugged. "He left. Went to Billings. Said he'll be back tomorrow." I glanced around. No adults, no one watching her. Just a child sitting in the fading daylight. "You have somewhere safe to stay tonight." She shook her head. Right then, I made a decision. "Come on," I said. "Let's get you something to eat." That night, Lucy slept on my couch while I sat in a chair by the door with a hunting rifle across my lap. If her father showed up, I'd be ready. He never did. Lucy stayed with me for 3 months before the system caught up. One afternoon, a social worker named Mrs. Patterson arrived, clipboard in hand, professional smile plastered on her face. "Are you Francis Morgan?" she asked. I'd been living under the name Frank Mason for years. "No, ma'am. Name's Frank Mason." Her brow furrowed. "We received a report that a minor, Lucy Henderson, has been living here. Is that true?" Lucy was inside, doing homework at the little table I'd built for her. She called me Frank now, like it had always been that way. She'd put on weight, looked healthier, even smiled sometimes. She needed safety. Her father was hurting her, I said quietly. Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. "I understand, but there are legal procedures. You can't just take in a child without authorization." "The system would have put her in foster care," I said. "That's standard, Mr. Mason. It's for her safety." Through the open doorway, I saw Lucy watching us, fear flickering in her eyes again, the same fear I'd seen that first day. What if I wanted to foster her? Officially. Mrs. Patterson blinked, taken aback. "That would require background checks, home inspections, training sessions. It's not quick." "I'll do it," I said. And I did. Over the next year, I jumped through every hoop they threw at me. The background checks came back spotless. Frank Mason had no record, because Frank Mason hadn't existed more than 5 years. I'd built that identity carefully, using the kind of quiet channels you learn about when you live off the grid. The home inspection was harder. They wanted signs of stability, permanence. I renovated the cabin, built Lucy her own room, fixed the plumbing, insulated the walls. I even took out a small loan under my alias, using the cash I'd saved as collateral. By the time Lucy turned 9, I was her official foster father. One morning over breakfast, she said it. "Dad, can you help me with my math homework?" I froze, coffee cup halfway to my lips. That word. I hadn't heard it in years, not from Benjamin, Paige, or Liam. They'd stopped calling me Dad long before I left. "Sure thing, sweetheart," I said softly. That night, I pulled out the old shoebox from under the floorboards, the one filled with pieces of my past life. Photos of Benjamin at his graduation, Paige at a college event, Liam with a soccer trophy. They'd all moved on. Benjamin was in business school now. According to one article, he was following in his father's footsteps. Only, his father wasn't me, it was Dylan Hayes. I closed the box and pushed it back under the floor. That life was gone. This was my life now. Lucy was my daughter, not by blood, but by choice. And that meant more than blood ever had. Still, I kept track. Still watched from afar. Still waited. Because someday I'd go back. Not for them, for me. Year 7 changed everything. I'd been keeping my money buried in jars behind the cabin, $60,000 saved from years of quiet labor and isolation. But cash doesn't grow. It just sits there. I started reading finance books, online investment guides. The knowledge came back fast. 2 decades as a financial auditor had taught me how to read markets, spot opportunities. I opened an investment account under Frank Mason's name. Started small, $5,000 in index funds. It grew. I added more. Then I got ambitious. Cryptocurrency was exploding. Bitcoin, Ethereum, names I barely recognized before. I spent months researching, reading white papers, studying the tech. It was risky, volatile, but the upside was massive. I invested $20,000 in Bitcoin when it was at $3,000 per coin. One night, Lucy asked why I was always on the computer. "Work stuff," I told her. "Trying to build something for us." She hugged me. "You already built something, Dad," she said, motioning around the cabin. She was right, but I wanted more for her. College. Security. A future that didn't depend on me swinging a hammer until my back gave out. By year 9, my investments had grown to over $400,000. Bitcoin had skyrocketed. I branched out into real estate crowdfunding, tech startups, dividend stocks. The man who once shoveled snow in Montana was now richer than the financial auditor who'd vanished from Michigan ever was. I began planning my comeback. It started with a simple search, Benjamin Morgan scholarship application. I found it on the university website. He was applying for a family legacy scholarship at my old alma mater, the very scholarship I had anonymously endowed years ago before my life fell apart. The application listed his mother, Amber Morgan, as his guardian and me, Francis Morgan, as his father. They were claiming legacy status through my name, my donations, my history. Even after 10 years, they were still using me. Next, I read Paige's application. Same story. Then Liam's. All three of them were applying for scholarships under my name, my legacy, while Amber gathered sympathy and Dylan Hayes played the role of father figure. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Not a warm smile, a cold one. They thought I was gone forever, that they could rebuild their lives on the ruins of mine. They were wrong. I picked up the phone and started making calls, first to a Boston lawyer specializing in identity restoration, then to a private investigator who could uncover everything about Dylan Hayes, and finally to my old university, asking about alumni engagement opportunities. I'd like to make a significant donation, I told the development office, and I'd like to discuss joining the Scholarship Advisory Board. They practically stumbled over themselves to say yes. 10 years ago, I had left DNA results and vanished. Now I was returning, not as Francis Morgan, the abandoned husband, but as someone new, someone with authority, someone who could take everything away. The scholarship office gave me complete access to their database. Every application, every essay, every supporting document. They trusted me because I had donated nearly $500,000 over 2 years without asking for anything in return. Until now. I sat in my office, real office, with my name on the door, Frank Mason, Legacy Scholarship Director. I opened Benjamin Morgan's file. His essay began with a lie. My father, Francis Morgan, taught me the value of hard work before his struggles overwhelmed him, though he left when I was young. I carry his legacy forward. I read it 3 times. Each word felt like a knife. Paige's essay was worse. Growing up without a father taught me resilience. My mother showed me that strength isn't about who stays, but who survives. Liam's essay was short, angry. I don't remember much about Francis Morgan. He's more myth than man to me. But his name opened doors, and I won't apologize for walking through them. I pulled out the red pen the university had given me when I took this position, a heavy brass pen engraved with the school motto. I had never used it until today. I carefully marked each file, legacy status invalid. Applicant does not meet criteria for family scholarship consideration. Paternal connection unverified. Recommend standard admissions review. Then I flagged the applications for manual committee review. No automatic acceptance, no preferential treatment, no shortcuts. Merit alone would decide their fate. But I wasn't finished. I pulled up Dylan Hayes in the university system and checked his donation history, or rather, the lack of it. He had never given a cent to the school, despite posing as a father to 3 legacy applicants. I drafted an email to the compliance office, potential fraudulent legacy claim. Applicants Benjamin, Paige, and Liam Morgan list Francis Morgan as father, but recent investigation suggests biological paternity may be misrepresented. Recommend DNA verification before scholarship dispersal. I didn't send it yet. That was the nuclear option. First, I wanted them to know I was back. I scheduled a mandatory meeting with Amber Morgan and all 3 children. The invitation went through official channels. Scholarship status review required. Attendance mandatory. The meeting was set 2 weeks from today. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the framed photo on my desk, Lucy and me at her 8th grade graduation. She was smiling, holding her diploma, wearing the dress I bought her for the occasion. That morning she had asked, "Dad, are you nervous about going back a little?" I admitted, "Are you going to tell them who you are?" Eventually, yes. But first, they needed to see what they had lost. Lucy hugged me. "They lost everything, Dad. They just don't know it yet." She was right. In 2 weeks, they would understand. The meeting room in Wallace Hall was cold and sterile. White walls, fluorescent lights, a long table with uncomfortable chairs. I chose it on purpose. No warmth, no comfort, just administrative efficiency. I arrived early, opened my laptop, and arranged the files in front of me. 3 folders, 3 names, 3 lies I was about to expose. Dean Merritt arrived next. He looked worn out, a man in his 60s who seemed more like an administrator than a teacher. "Frank, appreciate you setting this up," he said. "Legacy reviews are always delicate matters." "Just doing my job," I replied. Amber entered right on time. Navy blazer, heels clicking on the tile, every move polished and practiced. Benjamin trailed behind her, then Paige, then Liam. All dressed like they were here for interviews, not reckoning. None of them met my eyes. Why would they? To them, I was just another bureaucrat behind a desk. "Please, have a seat," Dean Merritt said, motioning toward the chairs across from us. They sat. Amber straightened her skirt, clasped her hands neatly on the table. "We're happy to clarify anything regarding the scholarship applications," she said smoothly. "All the documents should be in order." I stayed silent, letting the dean open. "Mrs. Morgan," he began, "there appears to be an issue with the legacy verification. Mr. Mason here has marked your children's applications for further review." Amber's gaze flicked to me, polite, poised. "I see," she said coolly. "May I ask what seems to be the issue?" I spoke evenly. "The problem, Mrs. Morgan, is that your children are claiming legacy status through Francis Morgan. But the committee can't confirm that connection." Benjamin leaned forward. "What do you mean, can't confirm? My father attended this university. His name's on the donor wall. We're entitled to that status." "Your father," I interrupted, "would need to verify that relationship, and Francis Morgan has not been available to do so." Paige's tone sharpened. "Because he abandoned us 10 years ago. You can't punish us for that." "I'm not punishing anyone," I said quietly. "I'm ensuring scholarship funds go to verified legacy students, those with proven family ties." Amber's voice rose, all veneer gone. "This is absurd. We've provided birth certificates, school records, everything you requested." "Except DNA confirmation," I said, almost softly. The room froze. Liam frowned, confused. "DNA? Why would we need?" "Because," I said, opening the top folder, "legacy status requires biological relation to the donor, and there's doubt whether that relation exists." Amber's complexion drained, not pale, but ashen, lifeless. Benjamin's jaw tensed. "This is offensive. Who do you think you are?" "I'm the scholarship director," I said. "And I take that responsibility seriously." Dean Merritt shifted in his seat. "Frank, maybe we should." The door opened. Right on cue. A courier stepped in, holding a sealed envelope. "Amber Morgan?" he asked. She nodded, speechless. "You've been served." He left. The envelope sat between us like an unexploded bomb. "What is this?" Amber whispered. "Open it," I said. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the papers. I watched her eyes move across the first page, then the second. I saw the exact moment she understood. DNA results. 10 years old. 3 children. 0 biological ties to Francis Morgan. "Where did you get this?" she managed to ask. I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. "I kept copies. Francis Morgan left the originals on your kitchen table 10 years ago. Then he disappeared. But now," I paused. "He's back." Benjamin snatched the papers, reading fast. Confusion twisted to shock, then fury. Paige stared at me, voice shaking. "Who are you?" I stood, buttoned my jacket. "Someone very good at identifying fraud. Your legacy claims are denied. All 3 applications will be reassessed under standard admission. No favoritism, no shortcuts." I gathered my laptop, walked toward the door, then turned back. "Mrs. Morgan," I said. "Tell Dylan Hayes I said hello." I left them there, truth detonating behind me. The room erupted. Benjamin shot up. Paige yelled questions. Liam looked sick. But I kept my eyes on Amber. She knew. Always had. Now everyone else did too. "You're lying," Benjamin shouted. "This is some sick game." "Sit down, Benjamin," I said coldly. "Or should I call you by your real father's name, Dylan Hayes' son?" He froze. Paige went white. Liam stared at their mother, horror dawning. Amber tried to speak. "Francis died. You vanished. You can't be." "I didn't die," I said. "I left because I discovered none of these children were mine. Because you lied to me for 18 years. Dylan Hayes, my so-called best friend, was their actual father. Dean Merritt looked back and forth, clearly uncertain. Perhaps we should. No, I interrupted firmly. They need to hear the entire truth. I brought out more papers. Financial statements showing how Amber had emptied joint accounts after I left. How she painted me as the abandoner while secretly seeing Dylan. How she built a sympathetic career on my name. You exploited me, I said to Amber. Used my reputation, my donations, my legacy to benefit children who weren't mine. Children who knew the truth and still treated me like garbage. We didn't know, Paige shouted. My mom never told us. I pulled out my phone and displayed a screenshot I'd saved years ago, a text from Paige at 15. I turned it so everyone could read. Obviously, Francis isn't our real dad, LOL. Mom told us at 12, but we keep it secret because he's rich and gets us into good schools. Paige's face turned ashen. I was just a kid. I didn't mean it, she stammered. I spoke coldly. You all knew. You all lied. And now, you're paying for it. Amber stood, desperate. Francis, please. We can fix this. Whatever you want. I want you to face the consequences of your actions, I said, voice like steel. Your children's legacy claims are denied. They'll be judged on merit, not a name they have no right to use. I looked at Benjamin, Paige, and Liam. You aren't bad people, but you were raised on lies and chose to keep lying. Maybe now you'll learn something about integrity. Benjamin lunged at me. He was fast, but 10 years of chopping wood and hauling timber had made me strong. I grabbed his wrist, twisted just enough to stop him without causing harm. Don't, I said quietly. You'll only make it worse. Security arrived, called by Dean Merritt, and escorted Benjamin out. Paige was crying. Liam just stared at the table. Amber looked at me one last time. I loved you once, she whispered. No, I said. You loved what I could give you. There's a difference. They left. All of them. I stood alone in the empty conference room, feeling something I hadn't in 10 years, freedom. I remained in town another week, tying up loose ends, meeting with university lawyers to ensure the scholarship decisions would stand. I submitted my resignation as legacy director, my mission complete. On my last day, I drove past my old house. Strangers lived there now. The yard had changed. The oak where I built Liam a treehouse was gone. Everything changes. Everything ends. Back in Montana, I returned to Lucy and the life I'd rebuilt from the ashes. She waited on the porch, reading. 14 now. Brilliant. The best thing that had ever happened to me. How'd it go, she asked. I sat beside her. It's done. Do you feel better? She asked. I thought. Resolved. Like closing a door that should have been shut 10 years ago. She nodded. Good. I got accepted into the honors program, she said. Advanced classes next year. I hugged her. That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. Thanks, Dad, she said. That word, Dad, meant more from her than it ever had from Benjamin, Paige, or Liam. Months later, I received a handwritten letter from Benjamin. Messy, crossed out, struggling. Mr. Morgan, it began. Not Dad. Not Francis. I don't expect forgiveness. But I see now what we took from you, what we destroyed. I'm paying my own way, working 2 jobs, learning to earn, not steal. Maybe one day I'll be half the man you are. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer. Maybe I'd respond someday. Maybe not. Dylan Hayes lost his construction business 6 months after the truth surfaced. Turns out, destroying your best friend's life makes people reluctant to hire you. He filed for bankruptcy within a year. Amber moved to Arizona. Last I heard, she worked in retail. The nonprofit fired her after the scandal. Paige dropped out of college, got a paralegal job, sent me a single message. I'm sorry. I never replied. Liam joined the military. Perhaps he'd find himself there. Perhaps not. I stayed in Montana, grew my consulting business, helped Lucy through high school, applied to become her legal father, not just foster parent. The judge approved. On her 18th birthday, we legally changed her last name. Lucy Mason, my daughter in every meaningful way. She asked if I regretted returning, if revenge was worth it. It wasn't about revenge, I said. It was about truth. They built their lives on lies. I ensured the foundation collapsed. And now, she asked. Now, I've built something real. 10 years ago, I left DNA results and vanished. I returned not to destroy, but to reclaim what was stolen. My name, my dignity, my truth. And in the process, I discovered something greater than revenge, peace.